This is Two Nerds and a Joke with Robert and Ernie.
Thanks to somebody hot girl voice. This is Two Nerds and a Joke with Robert and Ernie. I am Ernie.
And I am Robert.
Oh.
Yes.
How times have changed.
Yeah, yes, unfortunately, not for the better for the most part. So let me.
I mean, we should do a recap of where we're at in the world and the timeline for our loyal listeners.
Yes, because I think it's been we've tried. I wouldn't say the word desperately, but we've tried in the last few episodes at least our very darndest to try to avoid reality at all costs.
Yes.
We've made it very much non-topical to the larger extent. We've had a new section that we've added in to try and keep things light and fluffy. But yeah, we haven't really given anybody a time stamp, if you will. You know. So you want to start that fun road down insanity?
Oh yes, let's take a nice little trip, shall we?
After the innocents died.
So once we all thought, a couple of weeks, not a big deal. Now it's indefinite. We are basically in quarantine, probably going to the next level of quarantine. Just getting alerts now that if you're going to a public place, you have to wear a mask.
Yes. And just to add to the oddness of life, we my mother-in-law and my wife were for the last week sewing masks. I do have my own hand-sewn heavy-duty mask to wear, so I do have one, just in case.
Just in case, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, I am not a healthcare professional, nor an expert in anything of this type of
level
event. I just think this is bizarre. I just think this is straight out of the movies.
Yeah. Oh, completely. It's completely gone past the point of this is entertaining, this is amusing. It's past that point. It's no longer entertaining, nor is it amusing. Just trying to cling to sanity. I literally have been out of the house at all, maybe 3-4 times in the last 3 weeks, maybe.
Oh gosh, I would say in the last 3 weeks, I have. Let's just put it this way: the last time I left my place was to drop my daughter off with her mother, and vice versa. Went to go pick her up, and then drop her off. So literally, those are the only times I've left.
That's insane. Yeah, I went to get a Dunkin' drive-through, and that was the biggest event. That was literally the biggest thing. It's been insane. And the sad part,
I haven't even gone to any of those places. Like, since this whole thing has gone down, I haven't been to any restaurants. I haven't been through any drive-throughs. I've gone to the store twice because the previous times I went, I kind of stocked up in advance.
Sure.
So now I'm still like, I probably won't have to go probably for another week and a half.
That's good. Because in a week and a half, of course, as you know, the whole thing will be over and we'll be fine again, Right?
Yeah.
Right, Ernie? Right?
Yeah. Well, the other part is that, like, for a long time, I treated my house as just where I kept my stuff. I never really spent that much time inside my place.
Really?
Because I have a long commute to work.
Sure.
So I stay at work for a lot of hours during the day. Then at night, it's just basically get something to eat, probably watch a little bit of TV, and then I'm asleep again.
Right.
Like, probably on the weekends, I'm usually out.
You're as out as you can. Yeah, you'll go anywhere you can.
Just to get away, whether it be the beach, a walk, something.
Mm-hmm.
But lately, like, I can appreciate where I live. Like, I pretty much am treating this like, let me get used to, like, this being my home and treating it like a home as opposed to just a place where my stuff is.
Right. You're starting to truly understand that your walls being as undecorated as they are is kind of driving you slowly insane, I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, yeah, I see the home improvement stuff, like, and that's the other part, right? Like, legitimately, I could be doing, like, home improvement stuff and things like that, but the problem I see with that is that once I start doing stuff like that, I know I don't have all the stuff.
Right. You're gonna say, "Oh crap, I don't have XYZ. I can't finish it," so it's gonna list half-laid and half-finished projects all over the place.
Exactly. So I'd
Yeah.
rather do it all the way through.
Of course, finish it. Finish whatever you start.
Yeah.
Uh, well, for me, it's been interesting because I have almost the same commute you do, and it is just grab food at home because we usually cook, and I spend a few hours watching TV and that's it. So it's very similar for me. But recently, one of the things that we've done is, well, mostly the missus, I didn't really do it, but the missus rearranged the whole living room area, which is kind of our main living space, and made this huge empty spot right in the middle. So it has all the stuff it had, but it has this big table spot where we're going to be able to put a table in and play games and so forth when this is all over, if that ever happens, right? So it's a complete rearrange, and I have my little office set up for my work at home stuff, and it's very nice to have all the things right at my fingertips. The biggest problem I'm having with everything going on is, so I'm sitting a lot of the day because my
Yeah.
job is a sit down job, but I sat down at my old job too, so that's not a big deal. But what I'm finding is the chair is so awful that I'm actually standing up and having to walk around more just to keep my butt from hurting all day. So I'm actually moving around the house more, which is kind of weird, and I'm having to get used to being here all the time, which is also very strange. Because even on the weekends, a weekend in is crazy for us. Like no chores, no shopping, no nothing. It's kind of crazy. Very, very rare. But now that we're doing it, it's like I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. It feels very
I
strange to me.
I agree. I agree. It is very strange because, it's not like I have much to do besides work. Once work is done and I close everything up, it's like I hit the streaming platforms, or
Mm-hmm.
in the refrigerator.
Mm.
It's like,
Yeah.
it,
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
I got to a point where, um, it's kind of a joke that I heard. Like, now my refrigerator is saying, "What do you want now?" Like,
Good. That's
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's interesting here because there are obviously the biggest difference that the two of us face is, or between the two of us, is that I have a lot more people in my household, so I can still be social to a certain small extent, and not have to worry about catching or transmitting or sharing or whatever. So that is helpful to have other people around. So I couldn't imagine being in your position where you literally have no one. And for me, the other part of it is like you talked about me, like you had your daughter this past weekend. I haven't had my kids in 3, 4 weeks now. I haven't been
hmm
able to visit with them. But what's interesting is that we're now FaceTiming all the time. So I get
yes,
to actually see them, like even talk to them more now than I used to, even when I did see them. Okay, yeah, I'd have a weekend with them, but 9 times out of 10 it was either with one of them or the other because one was busy with something and couldn't come by. Now they have less of a schedule. Now I'm able to talk to them more. So that's kind of an interesting little twist. And my son was yesterday. He was like, we should make this more of a regular thing. And I was like, I would love to be able to FaceTime with you guys more. But you and I both know that you guys have, if you really get back to your true schedules, you're just going to have practices and sports and homework and, a couple of hours and that's it at night to do whatever you want and that's all. So it's kind of a, yes, I'd love it to be that way, but that's just not the way it's going to be when things get back to normal, if they ever really get back to normal, which I think is an interesting topic we should kind of look at. What is that new normal going to look like, do you think,
oof,
after this is all done?
very good question. Very good question.
Because I saw an interesting post to kind of let your brain juices simmer for a second. The other day was like, life has always been made up of, we make our life about work and then trying to get home. And now that we're home and everything's home centered, can we keep that feeling? Can we keep that where home is the center and work is not of our lives after this is over? Or will we not learn a lesson that being home centered is actually better for us and get back to the usual forgetfulness of that people tend to have, and just, oh, well, work is everything, and we don't need to be home. Will we be able to keep this kind of new shift in what we think is the most important thing?
Yeah, I would say that's been the biggest change for me is, like you said, the being home.
Mm-hmm. Actually being able to
Yeah,
enjoy
being
your home.
home first. Like, basically, I think over the past, like, 20 plus years, we've become a society where we're kind of, like, not centered around home anymore.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not saying everyone. I'm just saying, like, it seems like that's the way things have been going. Like, we've been basically on the move. Like,
Right.
we have to be able to, like, before, in order to get your news, you had to be home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't need that anymore. Before, you had to be home for your dinner. Not anymore. You can
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, find some place to eat at any hour of any day.
Mm-hmm.
Phone calls. Unless you stopped at a payphone, if someone wanted to reach you, you had to be home.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's completely the case. And I've also felt too, even on top of that, connections between people. Like, we're becoming more positively social creatures, in that we use online now to talk to others because we're so desperate for contact with other people, versus just perusing Facebook. We're actually, I mean, I reached out to a college roommate that I haven't talked to since I was in college, and we talked for a good 45 minutes about just our lives, what was going on. I mean, I haven't talked to the guy in ages. He's a great guy. You lose track of people,
Right.
and it's like, I've been in contact with people almost every other day, and it's like, what was I doing before? I didn't talk to these people, even like my dad and my grandmother. I mean, your family too. I knew you talked to your family a lot more than I did in general, but now I'm talking to my grandmother every other day and my dad every other day, just check in, make sure they're still sane. So it kind of opens your eyes to, am I not keeping people informed of my life and checking in on them and seeing how they're doing in their life enough? And then this kind of puts that perspective back on, probably not, and maybe you should do that after this ends as well, and setting up the time for that, the priorities for that.
Yeah, because before I never took much. Well, I hate to say took it for granted, but it was like, for me the routine was, just to check in with my folks once a day, see how they're doing. Maybe I'll swing by, maybe stay for like dinner or something like that. On the weekend, same thing. If I wasn't busy doing stuff or had anything planned, I would swing by, have Sunday dinner with them, just to keep, the family, ties strong, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
way there's not a big long gap between things. And like now with this change, it's like having to do the FaceTime thing. It's very different for me because now because and the whole social distancing thing, and particularly because their age, I'm
Mm-hmm.
concerned with actually like getting this because
Right.
they're more susceptible to getting it than I am.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and that is always a concern with I mean, my grandmother too. I mean, she has a few health issues, nothing too serious, but she's not a young lady, and she is totally in that age range, right?
Right.
And that does worry, and I have a lot of immunocompromised folks that I'm living with, and people tell us, and it's just something that I'm really concerned about, getting sick, and not seeing people who might have it, or people who've been contact. I mean, it's crazy, and I mean, and that's just, it's not to be scary, but it's to be kind of just more conscious and aware of these types of things than ever before. And I think post this pandemic, you know, are we going to be able to be comfortable enough to get back to real life, if you will?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what that's going to be like. I mean, is it going to be a point of like we're going to keep doing this and you'll see less people on the roads, less people like in parks and things like that like before, and more people would be staying at home? Or is it going to be the opposite? Is it going to be like, okay, it's finally over, floodgates open, everyone's using their vacation time, and they're just like living it up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
No.
I'm wondering which way to go. because I think it would only be in the extremes.
Yeah. Oh no. And aren't we always about the extremes? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, will we get so sick of being home after this is over that we never go home again, and people become more work hungry and being out more, and everybody will just start congregating to all these social events more than ever? I mean, because you got to think about it too. The other part of this is, like, from a business perspective, a lot of businesses are looking at this model and saying, you know what? We don't need to own a physical building. We could do this job remote and not have to pay rent, and then maybe rent out a building once a month or once every couple of months just for parties or whatever, or just for group meetings, and that's it. We can do this all remote. Why do we need a physical building?
Hey, look at retail. You
No.
could be to a point where you could close those doors and just everyone live off of just having their stuff shipped.
Oh yeah. I, Again, clothing, I still hesitate because the trying of things on. But if a return policy is easy enough, then it won't really even matter.
Yeah, if they basically say, hey, look, if you put it on and it's not fitting right, put it back in the box. Go to stick this label on the outside of it, and someone will come and pick it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's all it really is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so you kind of see where the world could go much more remote. I mean, it's forcing a lot of people that we're talking. Yeah, at some point we'll go remote. At some point we'll upgrade our technology. At some point we'll become more tech savvy, and it's forcing them to go. Look, you either become tech savvy or your business will close its doors.
Well,
You
that's the
need a new
one
mode of
thing.
thinking.
That's the one thing I was reading up on because with this increased time, being at home, one of the things I've done is read up on a lot of like technology,
Hmm.
and I want to ask you, and I want to ask our listening audience what everyone knows about 5G.
Hmm. 5G. So 5G is the next gen of phone network, right? It's like the next
No, it's
generation.
not just phone network.
Really?
It's the next generation of wireless networking.
So everything, not just phones, just all of networking combined. So basically connectivity and if you will, to use an old antiquated term, kind of the internet, but if not really.
Right, because before we equated everything to cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 5G is basically for everything now. Everything could be connected, right? To the
Hmm.
point where you no longer need to have the device on you to be connected. And
Interesting.
I think and the part of the article was like, yeah, what do people really know about 5G, right? Like you said, it's for the next phones, right? It's going to be better for phones. Not so much, right? Because when you're making a call on your phone, it's basically using the same frequencies, right? Digital
Yeah.
frequencies. That doesn't change. But
Mm-hmm.
like, but they said, well, with 5G, you'll be able to like download things on your portable devices at like broadband speeds.
Hmm.
Well, that was their
Interesting.
selling point, right? But then there's
Sure.
more to it. How about face recognition,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Let's just and we go to and I hate to do this, but use China as the model. They were the first ones to roll out 5G, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in China, I think it's like for every person, there's like 3,000 cameras.
That's insane.
Yeah. So you basically can walk in anywhere. The network knows who you are, and you could basically, purchase something electronically without actually doing anything in the transaction.
Wow.
Like,
That's
and the story goes was they one of the American consulates had like one of those interns, and he had an iPad, and over there you could rent a bike. Okay, you take a picture of the QR code on the bike. It verifies who you are and where you're at because it does all the the GPS syncing,
mm-hmm.
and then charges you a fee for like the time that you have your bike. And then when you're done with the bike, you just leave it and it locks itself, right? You basically say, I'm done, and then the lock. And then it locks itself
Wow.
electronically.
That's
Um,
crazy.
the person actually left their iPad in the basket of the bike. And when they contacted the company, they were able, using the 5G network, to find out where it was and who had it.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. Could you imagine a world where you didn't even need the device anymore? Like essentially you are being tracked in this network of 5G. Like everything is being tracked, what you buy, what you're doing, what you're watching, everything.
That's pretty crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's literally the dystopian future that everybody is saying, Big Brother watching. Well, now it's not a joke or a conspiracy by the nuts with, that say it's all aliens. It's like legit possible.
Right.
I
I mean, how smart would that be for retailers to be able to do that and not have to have stores? You
yeah,
know what I
I
mean?
mean, well, or do kind of what the Amazon tried to do, where it had the shopping center, where it had a grocery store and had
Yeah.
like one employee in the whole place.
Yeah.
Like you pick it up, you scan it, you pay for it, you're done, you're good.
Hey, I have to say, I do like the ordering ahead and picking up.
Yes, that is very nice, especially for food.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I had to get some stuff from when all this was going down. I did the whole like, let me just, pick it up at my local store.
sure.
And literally, I drove up. They saw when I arrived. They sent, they gave me a little text message. Um, and then I responded back to it. I parked at a special spot. As soon as I got there, this person came walking up and was like, "Hey, are you Ernesto Rosario?" I'm like, "Yeah." Showed him my phone. He did the little scan. Here's your stuff, and I was gone.
Yeah, it's the way of the future. The problem with a lot of it, though, here's the other the challenge, the dark side of it, if you will, that people have to start thinking about with this is the security concerns. Because you're talking facial recognition, right?
Right.
What if you have a twin? What if someone has surgery or something that made themselves look like you?
So you're saying someone would go through the trouble of getting plastic surgery? But you know what?
Hmm.
I think you would be able to tell.
Would you? You think the system
Yeah,
would tell?
I think the system would tell.
Hmm.
Because even with the face recognition now on most Apple products, it maps out your face.
Yeah. So it's pretty precise.
Yeah, it's pretty precise.
It'll be interesting to see if it comes to pass and what, because there's always got to be a way to hack the system, right? There always is. There's always a
There always
security,
will be. Yeah.
right? So there'll always be that guy. I mean, hell, just go back to Mission Impossible, with the face masks.
Yeah.
You know, it's the big reveal from Scooby Doo. Nobody is who they say they are. I
Well,
mean, if you
well,
go to fictional movies and cartoons, it's pretty far fetched. But I'm just saying, it's out there.
Well, I mean, it was like the same premise. Like, PC platforms, they're okay with using open source software, and Apple iOS products were like, no, we don't want open source software, so that way you don't have all this garbage happening with your system getting hacked or getting viruses.
Right.
And somebody like basically said, and I don't know, maybe kind of spread it out that nobody hacks Apple. Nobody likes to, Apple's kind of unhackable. Nobody would want to, that type of stuff. And some guy was like, you know what? I'm tired of them saying that. I'm just going to put a little bit of effort and I'm going to do it. And he did. He
Hmm.
proved it. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter. If somebody wants to get to your network bad enough, they're going to get to it.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that they talked about was the real reason that Apple didn't get hacked as much is because less people use it in general. So if you
Right.
want to go fishing in a pond versus fishing in the ocean, well, then go use a Mac and you go fish in that little pond. Maybe higher end users, but there's a lot less of them, and they're a lot more able to be focused on where and what's happening. Mac, yeah, they're all over the fucking world. Pardon my French. And I swore on the show. God help us all. Um, but you can't get away from a Mac, and they're everywhere. So yeah, they're going to be easy to hack. It's fishing in the ocean. You're going to catch something, maybe not what you want, but you're going to catch something. I mean, we've all had identity theft in some form or other, so it's out there. The risk is there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But you know what? Come to think about this conversation, I wonder what the
mm,
good doctor would say about it.
yes, that is true. And I want to let our fans know that we are going to continue doing lots of fun stuff with the good doctor going forward. So we will have lots of little episodes with him. So hang tight, guys. We're going to do a short commercial break first because we got to get paid for the, all the monies, all the podcast monies,
All that podcast money.
all those podcast monies, and then we will come right back after and give you a nice little wrap up and hope you enjoy the moment with the doctor. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Robert from Two Nerds and a Joke. Ernie and I wanted to start our podcast off right. And with Anchor.fm, we found everything we needed to do to create the perfect podcast all in one place. First off, it's completely free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on all the famous places where people go to get their podcasts, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And best of all, you could actually make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need and that we needed to make a podcast in one place. So go ahead today and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM now. And join us in the podcast community.
And now, sports analysis of fictional characters with Dr. Jason von Stietz.
All right. Thanks for having me back. This is so much fun. Today, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite characters of all time from my favorite book series of all time and one of the most successful TV series of all time, really great TV series. I'm talking about the character Jon Snow from the book A Song of Ice and Fire and from the hit TV show Game of Thrones. So Jon, he's one of my favorite characters of all time. Just to give a little bit of a personal anecdote or a little bit of my personal experience, I think why I like Jon so much and why so many people like Jon so much, because he's sort of a favorite from the show and from the book, is because I think a lot of people either relate or want to relate to the story of somebody who, on one hand, has tons of privilege and he lives in a castle, or he grew up in a castle, and he's training with all these like cool skill sets and all that stuff. But then also he's both sort of already a hero and he's also an underdog where, yes, he lives in a castle and also he's a bastard. And also he's the runt of the pack. People don't expect him to do great things. So there's that dichotomy that I think a lot of people can see themselves in, and they want to imagine themselves coming from like a great legacy. But then there's also the underdog story, so that people really enjoy. So I think that's probably why I like Jon so much, and that's why a lot of people like Jon so much. And today I'm mainly going to talk about Jon from the show, and then Jon from the book is very similar, but you get to know more of like what he's thinking, which gives you a lot more nuance. I'm mainly going to be talking about Jon from the book. And one of the things that makes Jon so great is that he's constantly learning, especially in season 1, and then all the way up to like, I don't remember exactly, but maybe season 4 or something like that. He's constantly learning from mentors, even enemies, people who don't like him and try to kill him. He's still learning from them. When you first see Jon in the very first episode, you're first introduced to him because Bran, the youngest child in the family, needs to see his dad, Ned Stark, the leader of the Stark household, execute a runaway, a deserter from the Night's Watch. And Ned, the dad, says that Bran needs to watch because he's old enough. He's almost a man grown now. And right after hearing this news, Lady Stark, Jon's stepmom, looks over at Jon and just glares at him. Even though Jon's got nothing to do with it, she just glares at him. And that's sort of the story of Jon's childhood. He's not doing anything wrong. He's only doing the things that he's supposed to be doing. And his stepmom just hates him, just blames him for everything. Somehow it's Jon's fault that Bran needs to watch this execution, even though Bran's just a little boy. Somehow, just everything that seems to happen is Jon's fault, just because Jon's a bastard. Because as far as we know at that point, Jon is the product of Ned having an affair while he was away at war, and Lady Stark just holds that against him with an intense rage that never really dies down. So Jon is held to this really high standard. He has, if you know the story, if you know the show, Ned is sort of, loved by all. He's considered like the perfect dad in some ways, or just like a really respectable, really, do the right thing, honorable man. And then, so that's Jon's dad. That's who he's trying to live up to be. And then he has Lady Stark, who just hates him no matter what. So he's trying to be perfect, and he will never be perfect. He will never be, accepted by his mother figure, and that kind of thing. So that's where Jon is coming from, throughout his life. And I think most people would probably crumble under that situation, but Jon somehow finds a way to thrive and to be very good and very good at what he does. He's very capable, and he finally leaves to join the Night's Watch. If you don't know the show, that's sort of like this. They're the Watchers. They protect the realm from different tribes called wildlings, as well as theoretically they protect the realm from monsters and giants and spooky things. So Jon goes off to join the Night's Watch, and during this time he's learning all kinds of really important lessons. So one of the first really important lessons: winter is coming. So if you know the show, what that's all about. That's the saying of the House family. That's sort of like their catchphrase. That's their motto. And the point is, like, no matter what, winter always comes. So times are good now. Lean times, tough times will come eventually. Winter is coming. So you have to be prepared. So Jon grew up with that ingrained in him. Winter is coming. One of the last things that Jon hears from Ned ever, like as Jon is leaving to join the Night's Watch, he hears, "You may not have my name, but you have my blood." So Jon Snow is indicative of being a bastard. That means he's not a legitimate child who was born through, marriage. So he doesn't get to have the name Stark like the rest of his family. He has the name Snow. So everybody sees him and knows his name, and they all know that he's a bastard. But Ned says, you don't have my name, but you have my blood. So what does that mean? That means lots of different things. But as far as the psychology, it means, Jon is a Stark. Jon holds all of those values that the Starks hold, like the values of the North. If you know the show, like the North people, especially the Starks, they value character, good, strong character. They value doing what's right and what's honorable. They value loyalty. They value honesty, things like that. All those good, like if you're watching a story, it's all the good guy values. So actually, let me take a break a little bit right now, because I've been talking. So far, is anything coming to mind, like as I'm talking about Jon's lessons and his history and that kind of thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Ernie.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. That's why I was like pointing at you, because I saw you kind of lean in. So
I leaned in. Well, okay, all right. So here's my thoughts, because Jon's an interesting character, because you got to kind of figure it. You put into that sports context. You got to kind of figure what. First off, two things. Mm-hmm. He's got that mother-father thing going on. So what does that represent? And then what sport is he going to be able to play? Like, what sport is he in? So because when you look at Jon, he has this kind of, he goes, I mean,
like for you, Ernie, like if he's going to the team that's, out on this outskirts that nobody really respects, like it's the team you go to get farmed on that nobody really cares about, and then it ends up becoming the most important team in the sport. So I'm trying to figure out where that kind of fits, because he's definitely a team player, but in some respects he's also kind of a lone shark out there on his own. He's kind of like almost like, what was that guy's name? The guy who had all the tattoos in the basketball.
Rodman?
Rodman. He's kind of almost the Rodman in a sense, where he has the right values, but he just irritates everybody just by his existence and how he looks and becomes himself. So maybe basketball, but I'm not sure. What do you think, Ray?
That's a good one, man. I have to say, Rodman's pretty close, because I was thinking of somebody. All right, so two kind of based on what the good doctor was saying, there were two sports figures that came to mind. The first one that came to mind is Ronaldo. This is a guy that basically he's from Brazil, but yet he doesn't really identify with Brazil because he basically left his home country and played in Spain for arguably like the New York Yankees of of soccer, which is Real Madrid.
Right.
All right. So he went there and gets globally hated, but he is like the highest paid athlete in the world. All right. No, everywhere he goes, he's recognized. And the thing is that with that also comes universal kind of hatred.
Right.
But when he goes to your team, though, because he's since left and he's with Juventus now, which is another juggernaut. They love him. They embrace him. They're like, yeah, we hated him, but since he's with us, kind of love him. It kind of also reminds me of someone that's here in the United States, which is a sport that only the United States cares about, is professional football. Tom Brady. Like, essentially, he has this long history, right? And everyone hates him because of allegations, things they've heard. He didn't come into the spotlight with a lot of fanfare. He kind of came out of nowhere, and he had to prove himself against all these odds, basically playing with nobodies. There's no superstars on his team, but yet he's winning these championships. And some people are kind of saying, well, that's kind of unfair, so we kind of hate you for that. So there's a lot of that hatred. And when you start talking about Jon Snow, about the whole hatred that he was getting from his stepmother, kind of holding him accountable and stuff like that, it's kind of I pictured that as the purest fans in both of those sports looking at those two individuals and saying, this guy didn't have to struggle. He was already great. We could see the qualities of greatness. It's just, he doesn't have the provenance, of coming from this elite family, so to speak. And he has to embark on the hero's journey, and I thought he did well. Now, keep in mind, I did watch all of GOT, and everything except, and I'm one of those guys, everything except for the last season was magical. I think they totally phoned it in for those last two, because I think they were already working on The Mandalorian. That's my theory, and I've said this before on this podcast. But yeah, that last season, I kind of felt like for Jon Snow, is that really what I wanted, for him to start over from the beginning again? He ended up doing the hero's journey and ended up right back at the beginning again. So I kind of felt like Jon, as a character, got shortchanged in this show.
Yeah, I feel like probably all the characters in the show got shortchanged in that last season. I've seen a pie chart, and then of course it's just a joke, it's not accurate, but 50% of the pie chart says, she's my queen, and then the other 50% says, I don't want it. And that's supposed to be 100% of Jon's dialogue. In the last season. Yeah, the last season was a bummer. I had really high hopes for it. It was so good leading up to that. The second to the last season, it had some hits and misses, but it was still good, but in my opinion. But then that last season, there was some stuff that I liked in it, but overall, I was ooh, yeah, this is not as good. But as far as what sport Jon would play, you both bring up some really cool, interesting points. And I think, well, if we're looking at Jon, the character and his abilities, oh man, he could probably excel at most sports because he is really athletic. He is, he's really good with his footwork, his movement. He's really fast. He's really strong. He's on the smaller side. So then right away for me, I think MMA. And then also fencing. I mean, we see from the show that he's really good at fencing. Mm-hmm. I think one of the characters, Ramsey Bolton, even says, I've heard that, according to the stories I've heard, you're unbeatable. Nobody could kill you. No, that kind of thing. Because Jon's such a good swordsman, a good fencer. So those are the sports that he's actually good at in the show. And then also thinking about other sports, just for me, I think of maybe football, and I think at least right now I'm thinking maybe like a running back who just kind of sees the hole and just goes for it no matter what, just always moving forward, even though he's on the smaller side, even though maybe at times it's not the smartest strategy to use, but he's just he has a mission in mind, and that he's just going for it, and then also somehow making it work. So on the outside, it seems like it's probably not smart, and Jon, nothing. But then if you actually watch, actually he has a really strong support system of guys who are super loyal to him and have his back, and he's earned that. They're not just loyal to him for no reason. He's earned their loyalty, and then they're all working with him, and they're all somehow achieving the impossible. So just at the top of my mind, that's some of the sport, or how he would fit into sports for me.
Yeah, I was thinking because with Ronaldo and Tom Brady, mm-hmm. if you talk to any of their other players, which no one could ever name any of the other players on his teams, mm-hmm. you just know the top two guys. They all say the same thing. Just his presence alone gives us mm-hmm. An edge, right?
Right.
We're always in this. We as long as he's there, we're always in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. And Jon, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so we know what he's like and his abilities, but where, because he's so headstrong in some ways and mm-hmm. kind of knows what he wants, would that be kind of where we'd have to start working with him? Or would us, we're now a team. You see this, we're all working together. But where would you start working with him to get him to that next level? Because, I mean, that's something that Jon really kind of has to deal with, is he has to find his place. And that's kind of what some of these people we're talking about have to do, too. I mean, hell, you could even go Bo Jackson. Yeah, because he played a little bit of everything, but he never really, I mean, as much as everybody dislikes Season 8, that we kind of get the feeling that I got here. But is this really what I want? Is this really who I want to be? I mean, you think that as a character, even if you ignore Season 8, that's kind of what Jon's been struggling for, is his, not to be too cornball, but to find his home, the place where he belongs in his sport, in that team. Yeah, all these people are loyal to me. That's great, but am I loyal to them?
Excellent point. Yeah. And actually that, like you said, that is one of the really big themes throughout his whole story. Yeah. So when I think about what are his best performances, when does he achieve the impossible? It's when he knows that he has a certain mission that must succeed, and not just it's not just because he just wants to have that outcome, win a Super Bowl or something like that. It's I need to do this for the good of the realm, for the good of my family on the other side of the wall, for the good of my brothers of the Night's Watch. When he really sees that this mission must be accomplished for all the things that he values, that's when he achieves the impossible. When 100,000 wildlings sieged Castle Black, somehow he was able to rally the brothers of the Night's Watch together and then fight them off. And he made really tough decisions, basically sacrificing one of his best friends, not Pip, Grin, ordering Grin to stop a giant from entering the castle at all costs. Yeah. So he knows he's going to die. When he was fighting, or when he was going up against Ramsay Bolton at the Battle of the Bastards, he knew they were outnumbered. He knew they were likely going to lose, but damn it, we need to win this battle. So there's a few different situations just like that where he achieves the impossible. And when he does that, it's because he has no conflict. So he's kind of like Kylo Ren in a sense, where Kylo Ren was not in his deeds, but in his internal conflict. So with both of them, they often have a lot of internal conflict, and that's when they kind of hem and haw, and I don't want it. She's my queen, and they're indecisive. But when they do know what they need to do to move forward, and they fully commit themselves to it because it's in alignment with their values, it's in alignment with the type of person they want to be, the type of world they want to have, that's when they're able to just achieve just amazing things.
So it has to be a strong value-based decision for them. So for you to get him to be more consistent in it, because again, I don't think it's a matter that he doesn't have the skill. Right. It comes down to a will issue, right? Because it's not so much that he can't perform it at a high level, it's that he has to have the right motivation in the scenarios that may not have the world end at it to be able to be motivated to do the greatness. You know what I'm saying? It's like, the situation is meh. I don't really have to worry about it, so I'm not going to do my best. Even though he may not consciously be aware of that, right? He might be trying his best, but realistically, he doesn't have that little extra, whatever it is, because the world's not going to end tomorrow. So he's not performing at his biggest or his best in every scenario.
Right. Yeah, so there's a thing called ambivalence. That's when you have really mixed feelings. A lot of times the goal that people want to achieve the most in the world also scares them. It would come with a lot of downsides if they achieved it. Like if they had the success if they achieved the success that they've been wanting, they could be isolated, they could lose their friends, their family could, think that person's too good now and has sold them out or something like that. So a lot of times people end up, maybe taking one step forward, one step back, and just kind of stalling out in their goals because they haven't worked through that ambivalence. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes you will lose a lot of friends if you start achieving your goals more. And then sometimes it's not true. And sometimes it's just, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of trying and then finding out, this is a lot harder than I thought, and maybe I'm not good enough, and just needing to grapple with those feelings. So if I were working with Jon, then he has all the skill sets. He's amazing under pressure. He's an amazing athlete, all that stuff. But we would want to get really clear on his values, really figure out where's this ambivalence coming from? Why, if you were the leader of the realm, or sitting on the Iron Throne, wouldn't the kingdom be so much happier? Wouldn't you be a good leader? Wouldn't assuming that he would be a good leader, I think he would. He's amazing as a battle commander. Maybe not so much as a politician, but he is somebody that you could trust, he would figure out who would make good decisions, and he would take advice from them. So he would be a good leader. So what are the downsides, and why are you resisting this? And so we would really want to work through that. And sometimes Jon is amazing at doing value-driven behavior, like we talked about, and then sometimes he might just not realize that his actions aren't lining up with his values. He might make decisions that, let's see, and I'm mainly thinking of him as a politician. One of the things that we saw in the second or third to last seasons was that he's great at giving orders to soldiers, but then when he needs to make a speech to a bunch of political leaders, he's not necessarily inspiring. He's more about giving commands. He's more about giving inspiring speeches right before a battle. But as far as talking to somebody, listening to their needs, hearing them out, and then shaking their hand and saying, "Here's what I'm going to do for you." Like he's not great at that stuff, but he probably values his citizens being cared for and having all the food they need and being safe. So wouldn't doing those things line up with his values? So I would want to work with him on that stuff and figuring out how these areas that he's not so comfortable with can line up with his values, and what are the specific actions that he should do to live those values as a politician or in any other area of his life.
All right, I was going to say, Ernie, last one goes to you, so make it a good one.
Yeah, just touching on that, do you think like there's like a sense of like narcissism, or is it like a little bit of bipolar with Jon Snow?
Well, in the Game of Thrones, pretty much everybody is narcissistic to a degree. Some people way more than others. So if we're using the Game of Thrones scale, then Jon is definitely like way on the low end of narcissism.
Okay.
And there is sort of like a couple points about that. There's like a normal, healthy narcissism that pretty much everybody has, and that you kind of slowly grow out of as you get older. So, for example, when you're a little kid, when Jon was a little kid, he probably thought like, "Oh, I'm the fastest boy in the world," because he beat 5 other boys in a foot race or something. So there's that kind of normal, healthy sense of narcissism that you just slowly grow out of as you meet more and more people and have more experiences. And it would be kind of weird if you were a little kid and you thought, "Oh, actually, I'm kind of average, and in a lot of areas I'm below average." So that would be kind of unhealthy and weird. But then there's also kind of a different sense. There's also a different type of narcissism that we don't normally hear about or talk about, where instead of somebody thinking of themselves as like amazing and unstoppable and the greatest person ever, they still see themselves as the center of the universe, but more as like, "Oh, everybody hates me. I'm the worst. Nothing I can do is right." And that doesn't normally appear, like you don't think of that as narcissism, but they're still putting themselves as in control of everything because they're to blame for everything. Everybody hates them. Everybody's thinking of them all the time. So that's a different type of narcissism. And I don't know. I don't think that's Jon, but and then he does kind of feel the pressure of the world, and if he doesn't act, then maybe the world would just end. Maybe the White Walkers would take over. So that is kind of like a little narcissistic, but then at the same time, it could just be him accurately seeing the situation, and he really is one of a few people who knows that that the world could end or that the world could freeze over because of the White Walkers. And if he doesn't step up, maybe nobody else would. Like that's really what we see in the show. Mm-hmm. So that's a really interesting point. And maybe he is showing some signs of narcissism, but then also it could be that he's right in a sense, and that he kind of is at the center of the world in a sense.
Right. Plus, you throw in the fact that he's romantically involved with his aunt, so, let's throw that into the mix.
Yeah. I think everybody in that show is in relationships with somebody that's related in some form. I mean, let's not fool ourselves,
there you go.
Well, Doctor, this has been very interesting. Obviously, Jon Snow is a very cool character. So, of course, Doctor, as you always say,
as I always say, insert tagline here.
Seamless transition.
Well, once again, Ernie, I gotta say, it was another great episode with a good doctor. He always has a blast doing it. We have a blast listening. I think we had some good conversation, get you really thinking with those old noodle brains. A lot of fun. But I want to tell everybody, stay safe out there. There's a lot of things going on. Technology is going to brighten our future, but it also is going to be something we've got to look out for, right? and we got to be careful of. So why don't we take everybody's mind and set it up as be safe now, be safe later, and hey, if we can keep home as the center of the life going forward, I would be very happy with that. Wouldn't you, Ernie?
Oh my gosh, yeah. If we could get if after all this is over, like the fear of contracting this virus, which is pretty serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once this is all subsided and we return back to the world, I tell you what, if I had to work remote, I would work remote. If I had to stay home 8-10 hours a day, I'd be okay with doing that. And you know what? It would get me more in touch with like where I live. Go for walks.
Yep.
Or, once they lift the ban, I can go back to the beach and have a new appreciation of that.
Yeah.
I think it would be great, honestly. I personally wouldn't mind this continuing.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And the biggest thing is if you can get in the right place, you could actually start doing hobbies and having a life outside of the office.
Yeah.
It might just happen. You never know.
It might happen.
You never know. You never know. And, of course, guys, stay nerdy as always. And,
Yes.
Ernie, just to make sure that everybody stays with a good social distancing, if you could give them a nice
Peace out.
peace out, everybody. We will talk to you guys next time.
Hey, it's Robert from Two Nerds and a Joke. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, when me and Ernie were trying to get this podcast off the ground, we had a lot of questions. How do we record the episode? What's the best way for us to get our show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do I make money from this podcast? Well, the answer to every one of these questions was really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shopping for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. Ernie and I don't even record all the time in our own areas. We do it from remote because of the recording feature. So if you want to be sponsored and you want to make some money, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise in your podcast. It means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now for Ernie and I's podcast by reading this ad. So let us know if you want to join us because we're having a great time with it and we want to make sure you get your podcast off the ground as well. So if you always wanted to start a podcast, making money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Anchor.fm/start to join me and a diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. We can't wait to hear what you produce in your podcast.
And that's another episode of Two Nerds and a Joke. Follow Robert and Ernie on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to their YouTube channel.